Hello and welcome to a very, very, very special episode of Just Shillin'. This is kind of ominous because it's episode number 13 and we're doing it on a Friday, but we're hoping that there is enough positive energy in the room right now to overcome any of the superstition. To start off, I am one of your hosts, Sean Hoffman,
And I'm your other host, Andy Bell.
but we have a third today. We have another person in the room. We have a very, very, very special guest, and that is the podcast extraordinaire, Taylor Swift aficionado, and top tier Bluey podcast expert, awesome, generally awesome dude, Eric Strothers. How are you doing, buddy?
Man, I'm great. I don't know that I deserve that excellent intro, but I sure appreciate it. And speaking of Taylor Swift, I do think it's fitting that it's episode 13 because that's like her lucky number and associated with her big time. And she dropped an album today. So, yeah. But thanks for having me on, guys. I am so stoked to be here.
It's almost like we
This
planned
is
it.
it's almost like this is I think this is the quietest I've ever been recording with you, Sean, because at the moment I am starstruck and in awe. I have been speaking via text, DM, and other messaging formats with Eric for, I'd say, quite a few years now.
Yeah,
Certainly
solid
since
few, man.
Yeah. And we have never spoken ever. So at the moment, I'm totally fanboying out that we've got the heavyweight that is Eric Strothers on this call, and I'm totally made up. I really am made up, and quite frankly, close to tears, which sounds crazy for a man of my age and my stature. Yeah, no, I'm so stoked that you're here, man. I really am, and I could not have been more excited than I am at this moment in time to have you on our very humble podcast. So thank you very much for joining.
Well, thanks, man. I should have given you one of these.
Well, hey there, mister.
That's awesome. I'm a big fan of soundboard all day, every day. It's perfect.
Yeah. Well, it's awesome to talk to you guys. I've met Sean in person and we've got to hang out a couple of times. And Andy, we talked about this before too. And it's a lot like how you talked about when you first met Sean. You would think that it would seem weird when you talk to people like finally. When you see them, like right now, it's just by video, but it's still we're face to face as much as we've ever been, and it doesn't feel weird in the slightest as far as like in the big picture. It's like, yeah, cool, right on, we know each other.
No, it's just a different format, and it's you're right. It's surreal, but also it seems very, very natural. So I'm stoked. I'm really stoked, and I just want to explain to everyone that is listening, our many listeners, that the reason why Eric is our first guest is, and this was very, very purposeful, in that Eric introduced Sean and I to each other, and we categorically, when we turned what was originally a joke about we should do a podcast, and actually turned it into reality. We said to each other, if we're lucky to have a guest one day, it's got to be Eric, because Eric really is the genesis of this. He
It's his
introduced
fault.
us.
It's his fault.
It's his fault. Yeah. So blame him. If you've got any complaints about the podcast, please direct them to Eric Strothers, because quite frankly, it's his fault.
That's fine. Send them my way. I'll read every one of them.
But yeah, we were obviously, you and Sean are close already. You and I were talking to each other by one means or another. But I joined for some reason. The stars aligned one day whereby I could actually join one of your Twitch streams, and everyone that's listening, I'm sure, is listening to Eric already, and so therefore know he's a massive gamer and broadcasts an awful lot on Twitch. And for some reason, I can't remember what. Maybe it was a particular day that I was working late, or indeed he was able to finish work early. But the point being is, I was able to join a live Twitch stream rather than wait till later on and catch it up on playback. And it was just before Star Wars Celebration last year in London, and I happened to be going. Eric knew that. Sean happened to be going. Eric knew that. And in a very flippant way, he said, "Hey, you guys should connect." And I think, ironically, he was actually playing Survivor. You were playing Jedi Survivor, right?
Probably
At
so,
the
yeah.
time.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you know, throwing chairs out of the window and getting frustrated, as we all did with the game at the time. And as a result of that, Sean was the very first person I met from our expanded community of friends. He was very kind to agree to meet me in a hotel bar, which sounds in itself a little bit dodgy. But he agreed to meet me in a bar, and the rest is history. And it's all your fault, Eric. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm like the Tinder of podcast hosts. That's me. No, it's so cool though, and that's something too that like in the podcasting community and going to cons and everybody's nervous if they've never been to one. And the number of times, like, I'm sure that you guys have heard it. Oh, I saw you at da da da, but I didn't
Mm.
come and say hi. And it's like, man, just that's what we're here for. And, come and connect and let's hang out and do that. And it really helps take that edge off. And then once you've done it one time, then it's no bigs to go in. And so I'm so glad that you guys actually did meet up. And, with Sean being the world traveler that he is, that was no problem for him to just cruise over to another country and make a pal. But for me, that would have been like a stretch. So I'm glad that you two were able to do that.
I mean, let's be honest. It was in my hotel, and I was already there. So I mean, I really didn't do much. Andy reached out. I'm like, man, you got a weird screen name, but hey, let's hang out. Because you know what? Even after all these years, I still had the jitters as a self-imposed outsider. I'm like, oh, what'll make this better if there's two of us. So then we can at least talk to each other and push each other to move forward. Because what's funny is actually came up in some Discord conversations within the last, because talking about Japan and other celebrations. It came up recently of the realization of like certain groups of people. It's like, oh, hey, we were all actually at these same events for multiple celebrations, but we just didn't know each other because we were all terrified. So we all just sat there in a room.
Right.
And then next thing you know, 5 years later, like the topic was Chicago, Steel show there. And it's so funny now looking back 5 years ago. It's like, I know the person who the stranger I was sitting next to that day, and the stranger next to them, and the stranger next to them. Now we all know each other. I could have saved a ton of headache and stress and worry because we're all just normal people with common interests. And all I needed to do 5 years prior would have been like, hey, hi, nice to meet you, I'm Sean.
Right.
We're all the same names that we've seen a million times. But it's nerve-wracking, and I think that's my push and my ask of people. If anybody listens to this in the future and is ever in the position that I felt like I was in, and Andy and I've talked about a million times over time, like if you ever go to celebration, or if you ever go to these events, or if you ever see people, like, don't we're all on the same page. Like,
Mm-hmm.
no one this isn't a cult of personality. I think there's a natural exclusion of people who are those big personalities who are maybe mean and not the greatest. It's like, that's not this group. Like, come up, and like everybody I've spoken to over the years has been so nice, so welcoming. And it's like, I don't know why I expected otherwise. It's just like, I could have done this in Orlando however many years ago. And
Right.
man, that would have been really cool. But we live and we learn. And no regrets, and happy for it.
And on that point, while we're talking about celebration, bearing in mind that Eric Strothers is the busiest mutt guy I know, that works harder than anyone else I know, he still has a very, very young family, that having running around all over the place and certainly up the walls and everywhere, Um, any plans for Japan in your spare time
So
at Easter? At Easter.
I would love to go. For one, I've always wanted to go to Japan. My
Yeah.
mom and dad went there when I was very, very young. Funny little side story is my mom, neither one of them could speak Japanese, and she was stuck at the hotel while my dad was working, and she wanted to mail something. And so she went and
Mm,
asked where the post office was, and she went in the wrong building and was wondering why all these guards were there. She was at the bank. She's trying to mail a postcard. I'm like, "Oh, my mom, that's just so her." But unfortunately, because of, well, mostly financial things,
yeah.
going isn't really realistic, but also because they keep having celebration on Easter weekend, which listen, I get it, but I'm a church guy and that's
Yeah,
my
yeah, yeah.
full-time job too. And so now I could very well take off. I did for Orlando, but
Mm,
that was what, 7 years ago. So I'm probably due. I probably could. But um with it being the distance that it is, if I were to go to Japan for the first time, ideally I would go for 2 weeks and spend the first week just experiencing Japan and then spend the second week doing Star Wars stuff. And I would want to take my wife and kids who would not care at all to be at Celebration. Even my son, once he was there, would probably be like, "Cool," but my wife and
mm.
my daughter would be like, "Yeah, we're good." So, it's just not realistic. Now, lots of things could happen between now and then. I could win the lottery. You just never know, but unfortunately, probably
Yeah,
not.
yeah. I mean, I, I, I think you and I have spoken about this before, in one form or another. I'm literally flying in and flying out.
Mhm.
And to your point, in an ideal world, and that's because Lucy is studying, and it's her finals for a particular exam that she or qualification that she's vying for, studying for, and it's just bad timing. So I'm literally going in and going out, which makes it a heck of a lot more affordable.
Mhm.
Um, but I'm not going to experience Japan, if I'm perfectly
Right.
honest with you. If I'm not going to experience the place, I mean, getting from here to Japan and the accommodation is a little bit, but not massively, a lot more than what it would what it would cost me from the UK to the US. So it's neither here nor there from
Mhm.
a financial perspective. But I'm 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 resigned to the fact that I'm not actually going to see um, much of Japan itself, and I'm actually okay with that because, to your point, if I was going to see it and experience it, I really would want to do it with my family.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I totally get where you're at. I totally get
Mhm.
where you're at.
And
That's
I was the
cool.
same way with London too, because it fell on Easter, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
also, I would love to come and experience London, but like the thought of not taking my wife and kids, that's something they would get a lot out of. And the only foreign country for me that I've been to is Canada, which it's well, it's not really a foreign country. It's America still. So I would love to do that, but I gotta bring them.
Well, when the kids are old enough, because I can remember my children being the same age as yours, where long haul travel was not the best idea for young kids. And they weren't particularly happy with the whole thing. But certainly when they're at an age where um, they can travel and can stay relatively content, you've got a place to stay over here. So you're always more than welcome to stay over here with the
So,
whole
well,
family. Because
I can't wait to play with some of those toys I see sitting on that shelf back there.
yeah, 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 yeah. I'll lock this room, obviously, but yeah, no, you're more than welcome here, and you're more than welcome to play with. Oh, I've got to show you something. Oh, I'm sorry, we're totally. This is completely off script now. Um, I'm sure you haven't had a chance to listen to our extensive back catalogue of podcasts, but our mutual friend Chris Hall introduced me to bootleg Star Wars toys, and I am totally addicted to these really, really poorly made, really, really poorly painted bootleg Star Wars toys. This This is Chewbacca in disguise, if you remember in Shadows of the Sith, Empire. Sorry, Shadows of the Empire. And he honestly, the guy's a bandit. He's got me totally fixated with with bootleg toys. Sorry, resuming normal service. Sorry, Sean. I'm not particularly professional, but you knew that anyway.
Yeah,
Um,
I don't know why you think I'm surprised. I'm
so
actually shocked
Eric,
you didn't show him the eyeball. The eyeball's the best part. Like you
oh
kind of
yeah,
teased it there. It's
no,
like,
no,
oh,
no,
look
no,
how
no, no,
bad
no.
it is, but no, the eyeball is like in the middle of its face. It's all like
Oh,
somebody close.
nice.
It's like pin the tail on the donkey with a paintbrush, just bloop, right in the middle. It's
That
pretty.
is
It's
oh
coming.
my gosh, that is excellent.
Oh,
Yep,
you
so
can't see
close
it.
yet so far. No, I can see it.
Yeah,
That's oh
yeah.
my gosh.
Honestly, I found a new love in life, and it's bootleg toys, folks. So, um, typically, what would happen now, Eric, is that we would normally just chew the fat and talk about news, which we covered on Wednesday, because we wanted to make this call exclusive to you and all about Eric. But we would also follow up with what we're watching, what we're listening to, what's really getting us excited at this moment in time. So we've done our bit on Wednesday. So I was wondering if you wouldn't mind sharing with us what you're watching, what you're listening to. I think we already know what you're listening to. But what's particularly getting you excited at this moment in time? What are you looking forward to?
So
Track one of 31.
yes. Yeah, we will discuss the new Taylor Swift album at length. Yeah, so Taylor Swift just dropped a new album today, and surprise,
Yay.
surprise, it turns out it's secretly a double album, right? And so that's been quite good thus far. And I'm really excited to just like dig into it and give it like multiple listens to where I can really let it sink in. There's some great lyrical moments, and so far so good. I've been enjoying The Bad Batch quite a bit. My son has sorta checked out on it. His
Oh.
main thing right now is watching gamers on YouTube, and none of which are me. They are all Minecraft guys who scream a lot, and, it's not my bag. And, I'm looking forward to The Acolyte. I realize this is a lot of Star Wars, but realistically, that's the most thing I'm consuming and looking forward to. The Acolyte is gonna be a banger, I think.
Mm.
But, something that we've been watching quite a bit of is The Office. And I know the series is it's gone, man. It's live in the now. But we're watching the Superfan episodes on Peacock and having a blast with them. And it's a show that I didn't watch when it was on. When it was new, I watched it the whole thing not long after the series ended. I was like, that was cute. And then years later again, we watched it and then we got done watching it and went right into the Superfan episodes. And I'm sort of addicted to it right now. There's
It's like a
weird
comfort food.
parallel.
It's like a comfort food kind of thing where it's like, ooh,
It
it's always nice to go back to and
yeah.
feel safe.
We are, my family, extremely guilty of that, where we watch the same series over and over. We've watched Parks and Rec so many times that, my kids would quote it constantly, and we're like a living meme, honestly. To the point, this is how much we watch Parks and Rec, is we went to a Parks and Rec trivia, and we missed one out of the whole thing, and the guy was like, "I'm sick of you guys," right there. You guys we were crushing it, and, we did the same thing with Community, and, right now it's The Office, so and one of the nice things it is that you can put it on, and if you get sidetracked with something, who cares? You didn't have to
Yeah.
stay in it to win it and be like, "Oh, crap, what's happening now?" I've been going through and watching the, Netflix Marvel shows again, because I never watched The Punisher, so I'm working on it right now, and I'm really digging that stuff too. It's weird that I don't watch enough new stuff to really comment on the current goings on of culture, but I like what I like.
Good
Yeah.
job liking what you like, man.
Thanks, ace
Yeah.
job. Yeah. Somebody
I
should make a shirt of that.
Yeah, they should. I like you. I didn't watch. I'm akin to the obviously the UK Office,
Mhm.
which I enjoyed when it first came out, and I never saw The Office with Steve Carell. I never ever
Uh-huh.
saw it. So it's only been in the last 6 months that we've burned through it as well as a couple, myself and Lucy, and I loved it to
Yeah.
the point where I've disappointed quite a few of my friends locally, and I'd argue it's better than the UK Office, which is I genuinely feel that way. It kind of dips off a little bit. It kind of dips off a little bit
Mhm.
with when Michael leaves.
Yeah.
It got a little bit funky and a little bit weird, and it was trying too hard in certain areas. And I think that much as I love Will Farrell, I I that didn't land with me particularly well.
No, it was
But
not good. Yeah.
it really got back to its stride, and certainly in my mind in the last season. And I really enjoyed it. And like I say, it's The Office is part of our. It's almost like a part of our institution in the UK. And to say that I thought that the US version was better it means something. It really does. It's a really really good series. Community I love, and I heard they're making a movie, right? You're doing
That's the word. Now, past them saying, "Yes, it's happening," I've not heard a single other thing about it,
right,
but that's supposed to be the deal, which I'm looking
right.
forward to that too. I really like that show.
So do I, as long as it doesn't distract Donald from the
Donald
Lando
Glover.
movie. Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
he
And
was
he
so great
himself.
as
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Was he Trey? Was he Trey in Community? Was that his name? I can't remember.
Troy.
Troy. Troy.
Yeah,
Sorry. Yeah,
Troy
yeah. No,
Barnes.
no, no, no. Funny as heck. Okay, that's good. So what we've done, and again, good job liking what you like, Eric. What we've done is when we have really esteemed guests like you on the pod. I mean, bearing in mind you're the first, so you are somewhat the guinea pig in this particular concept. What we've done is we thought we'd choose a subject to just talk about that's specific to you, and being a maestro and a musical genius that you are, we thought we'd talk
Nice.
about music in particular like that. I've been practicing that all week. Um, we thought we'd talk about movie soundtracks, and so hopefully you looked at your assigned homework or for this week, and I want to talk to you guys about your top 5 favorite composers or bands, and the movie or franchise scores that they pull together. Now, what brings us together as a trio is our mutual love of Star Wars. So I've actually created a rule in that whatever we talk about, it can't include Star Wars because naturally, number one, pretty much across all of us, I'm guessing would be John Williams. So with that in mind, I've suggested that we look outside of the box a little bit, and I'm going to ask each of you, including myself, in order, your top 5. Sorry, your number 5, your number 4, your number 3, and your number 1. Who the composer or the band is, and what the movie or the franchise was that they're responsible for providing the score for, and the reasons why. And it's the reasons why that I'm really really interested, because in the 5 that I've chosen, there are some compelling reasons to why I chose them, um, and I hope you took it as seriously as I did. Anyway, our
That
guest
sounds
is
like that
first.
sounds like school.
I know. So-
A
eat your greens,
thousand
boy.
words.
So we're starting with number 5, and I'm going to ask our esteemed guest first. Your number 5, Eric. What
This
is the
was
composer band, and what is the movie or the franchise?
okay, this was very tough. All right. And so 4 and 5 were like teetering for
Ooh.
position. And you'll understand why once we come around to what my number 4 is, but I won't I won't spoil it. And that is Bill Conti with Rocky. And honestly, when I think of Rocky, because the theme was so prevalent in the first film, it really kind of encompasses all of that franchise. Because you heard it in every one, and you guys know the one I'm talking about with the trumpet flourish. Dun, 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 ba, ba, ba.
Mhm.
It's so good. And then also when they started introducing like song scores as well, you know, you had Eye of the Tiger and Living in America later on in the franchise. It's just so good. But Bill Conti and his use of horns and his use of like more modern instruments with, you know, electric guitars and all of that
Mhm.
stuff. He just created some magic, and it was kind of nobody was really doing that. It was either one or it was the other at the time. And mind you, this I was a wee lad when that movie was a thing, but I couldn't make those comparisons myself at that level, but looking back, I can understand what drew me to it because I love symphonic scores. Obviously, Star Wars is a huge one, right? And anything John Williams does is so good. He is the Stephen King of the music world as far as being prolific and amazing every time. But also having like the modern rock instruments because I liked rock music as a kid. That one
Yeah.
really landed hard. So,
Excellent. Excellent. It's a good opener. Sean,
yeah.
over to you. Man.
All right.
Number 5.
So I'll be clear that my reading comprehension is just as poor as my attention span. So I picked my favorite movies, scores, and then obviously I had to look up some of their composers because straight over the head. My number 5, and obviously mine are from like a window of time that I think, to put it lightly, maybe I've have less experience on this earth than maybe both of you. So I have a smaller window.
Yeah,
Uh,
your kids and your music.
For 1 week, for 1 week, can you just give it a rest, please?
no,
1 week.
never. Uh,
Go on.
so I think a lot of mine are very specific to it's the music, but I think it also ties really heavily to the time of my life in which I watched it and I consumed it. So my number 5 is maybe not the strongest. Like I also tried to kind of pick things that I didn't think other people were going to pick. So my number 5 is the movie Requiem for a Dream, and the
Oh,
composer was Clint Mansell.
Wow,
Uh,
excellent choice, though.
the main reason is for Lux Eterna. Like that song,
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
if you don't know what I'm talking about, you'll listen to it, be like, oh, I know this song. I mean, say what you want about the actors in the movie, all that stuff aside, the the soundtrack and the score of that movie is, to me, it is the movie 110%. Um, the dramatic draws through the seasons, how the score is broken down into like summer, fall, winter, and just the breakdown of all of that is, I don't know. It's just something I still live with to today. Like I won't watch the movie again, but it's like you hear that da 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 da. It's like, oh, I hear it, and it's like, oh, it brings me back. I see the scenes, I see the
Mhm.
everybody breaking down, and it has a lasting impression on me. I think it's fantastic.
That's cool. That's cool. Heavy film though,
Yes.
but very very cool. Very very cool. I've gone a bit mainstream. I'm really sorry, guys. I'm already going out with the cheese. My number 5 is Howard Shore and the Lord of the Rings, and I judge a movie score by its re-listenability. Is that a word? It's a word now.
Sure. Yeah, yeah.
Whether it,
It is
Yeah.
yeah,
now.
why not? Um, yeah, it's by its re-listenability. In that, there are a couple of movie soundtracks that I'll listen to over and over again, especially when I'm working. I don't know whether you get into that. I find it easier to listen to music when I'm working. I work an awful lot, as you guys know, behind the keyboard and in front of behind a monitor, and having music that is predictable and soothing and many other things in the back of my mind um, makes it easier for me to be productive and get stuff done. Um, one of a genre is movie soundtracks. There are many movie soundtracks I'll talk about that kind of get me into that kind of mindset. And the Lord of the Rings trilogy soundtrack for me is one of those things that I can stick on at 8 o'clock in the morning when I start work, and it'll finish at 6 o'clock in the evening when I'm done, because the whole franchise is so goddamn long anyway, that it keeps me going. And there's a couple of tracks in there, especially towards the end of Return of the King, for example, which replicates an awful lot. I find an awful lot of the choir music in Lord of the Rings, and the especially when it comes down to the elves, the domain of the elves, I think is absolutely stunning. And yeah, it may be a little bit commercial, but I don't care. I love it when I'm trying to remember Liv Tyler's she's Arwen, isn't she? When Arwen and Aragorn um see each other again once he's been crowned the king of Gondor. There's a piece of music that resonates all the way through the trilogy that kind of comes to a crescendo at the end of that particular movie, that it just gets me every single time. And yeah, it's a little bit commercial, it's a little bit cheesy, but it's my list and I like it.
Well, listen, I mean, and that's the whole point too, is that it's what stuck with
Yeah,
you. And, in choral music, just this didn't make my list. It was a really tough one, but like John Powell with the Solo movie soundtrack, the choral pieces that were Enfys Nest's themes. What made that so powerful was the choir. And if you can look at behind the scenes recordings of them recording
yeah,
that, and it's just breathtaking to see it happen. It's so neat.
yeah. We're gonna have to get you back, because what we'll do then is a top 5 of Star Wars, because we know that, I mean, there's some stuff in that. I mean, there's
Right.
in that soundtrack. Oh god, we're going off a tangent. I'm doing this again. Sorry, Sean. In that soundtrack,
It's okay.
there's
It's
in that
your show.
soundtrack. I think it's, yeah, I know, but I keep derailing all the time, and I've got to do better. There's a sound. It's, I think the actual um I think the track's called "Flying with Han and Chewie," and it's like a very melodic kind of. It's once they've escaped Mimbar, and they're going towards the planet to do the heist on the space train
Oh,
stuff.
jeez, I can't remember what
Um,
it is either. You're fine.
but it's a beautiful piece of music, that ship they stole, and it comes in, and it glides over the, man, it just, every single time. Right, I promise not to derail. Eric,
Yes.
what is your number 4, please?
Okay. Well, I mentioned that it was like teetering on the brink, and the way I approached this is I thought about the soundtracks that meant the most to me, and now let's look and see. Now the second part of it is who are they by, really? Even though I knew what drove it was what did the soundtrack say to me, and a lot of it was because of, as Sean put it, a time of my life when those things are
Yeah.
just matter more to you. And so this is Bill Conti again, but it's the Karate Kid.
Mm.
Because they're
Nice.
completely different. The Rocky movies and the orchestrations behind it versus the Karate Kid you would be hard pressed to know it was the same guy,
Yeah.
because the instrumentation's all completely different and the approach is completely different. But one of the things that I loved about the Karate Kid is like the gentleness and his approximation of combining like the a Japanese feel into what is very plainly American melodicism. But then, I mean, we can't deny the impact of this, even though Bill Conti didn't have anything to do with it, is the song score of the movies, of the original Karate Kid, with Cruel Summer and, obviously the best around. You put those together with the score, the movie score, man, it's just hard to beat all of that.
Yeah.
And to
I'm
have a
with you.
composer like him be able to do things that are so, in my opinion, polar opposites, because let's face it, the character arc of the Karate Kid versus Rocky, there's a lot of similarities to it as far as how it starts and how it ends. But it would have been easy to just go in and follow the formula, and he didn't. It was nothing the same, and I just that's really cool. That's a cool vibe he got in there.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you listen to a piece of music and you don't know, but there's a stamp or a um something quite familiar to it that you'd normally associate with, oh, that's a Williams track, or that's
Mhm.
a Hans Zimmer track. It's clearly they have their personality within the type of music. But what you're saying is that this guy is so diverse that quite frankly, you couldn't identify who it was the same person.
Right.
No, that's cool. That's very cool. Sean, number 4, please, my friend.
Number 4, in an effort to build suspense, instance, Eric has made a Star Wars reference, and Andy's made a Star Wars reference. I feel like I need to catch up. So similar to my favorite Star Wars movie not being Empire Strikes Back, because I feel like that's a low hanging fruit, and I have other favorites. This film is my favorite from this composer, which I believe is not the low hanging fruit, and the composer is Alan Menken, and the movie is Disney's The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Specifically, the music, the movie is goofy and it's got some goofy stuff in it, but the soundtrack to that movie is a banger. Specifically, I mean, there's obvious hits like Out There and Topsy Turvy, but the greatest villain song from Disney, in my opinion, is Hellfire. If you do not know it, pull it up on YouTube. It is awesome. Love that soundtrack. Alan Menken's a genius. Uh, Obviously, with all his partnerships that he's had throughout many of the Disney Golden Era films, plus everything else that he's done, that is one of my favorites. I watched that movie specifically for the music. Awesome. Love it. 1,000,000%.
That's cool. That's cool. My number 4 is a bunch of is various artists. So one of the in fact, it's a film that we talked about recently between you and I, Sean. It's a film from 1990 called Hardware, which is a very
I watched
it's
that
a
the other
very
day based on your
uh,
recommendation.
we haven't spoken about it yet, have we?
No, we
Um,
have not.
no. So Hardware is Eric. Just for context, it's a it's a really cheap Terminator rip off that was created in the UK. Actually, no, it's not. Sorry, it takes its origin from a very short story within a comic called 2000 AD back in the 80s. 2000 AD, which was the genesis for characters like Judge Dredd. So Judge Dredd, ABC Warriors, Rogue Trooper, Strontium Dog, all those kind of characters that you associate with 80s grungy sci-fi. The short story called Hardware, and they created it in, I think it's 1990. Let me just double check. Yes, 1990 film, and it was filmed in the UK when Canary Wharf, which is the big CBD now for the UK. It's basically where all the banks, high rise skyscrapers are in London. But at the time, it was the old Docklands, so it was quite a rundown and deprived part of the UK. And they filmed this movie whereby it's basically a poor man's Terminator, albeit it's a robot that's found in pieces that is sold to someone. The robot rebuilds itself and then goes on a killing spree. I'll leave it to you to look it up. It is, in my mind, a masterpiece. To most people, probably the worst film ever made of all time. But anyway, what got me really, really into it, and I've played on repeat, on repeat, on repeat, on repeat, particularly when I was studying. So I was studying also in the 90s as well at university. And so this thing would be on repeat because it was a mixture. The soundtrack is basically, I mean, there's not a score. It's a mixture of um, bands music, and it's a mixture of John Lydon, so Johnny Rotten from the Sex Pistols, Lemmy from Motorhead, Iggy Pop, um, and others, including opera, for example, from Gioacchino Rossini. It's insane. It's the most insane soundtrack. Like I said, think of metal plus punk plus real high tier opera, and a little bit of a little bit of trance music as well. So it's quite, there's a lot of dance music there as well, all thrown in to create this very very hodgepodge ensemble of a soundtrack, which kind of represents the ensemble of a film that it is. And I love it, and I will still love it to my dying day because, as Lucy knows, I'm going to be buried to the to the sound of the Order of Death from Johnny Rotten when it's when I meet my maker. Anyway,
That's very
that's
subtle.
that's yeah. Bye guys. Eric, we're on number 3.
Well, it's wild that based on your number 4 pick, this was almost my number 5, and I almost moved 4 and 5 up to 3 and 4. Oh my gosh, there's my dog barking. So my number 3 is, it's a wild pick, okay, and I bet very few people would choose this. But this is Brad Fidel, I believe is how he pronounces his last name, and that is the Terminator franchise. And specifically Terminator 1 and into Terminator 2. The massiveness of the Terminator, especially Terminator 1, is that movie was made on like a 2-cent budget. We
Yeah,
just watched that within the last couple weeks, and my son, who is 9, made fun of the effects. He goes, "The graphics are terrible." I'm like, "My dude, that was a model that they were, doing all this stuff." But the
yeah,
music, when you think about what he did with a synth, it was all synth driven. There's no organic instrumentation in there. It's so good, and the way it was able to just show, like, the future feels like this, but also this desperation and all these things, and then, like, suddenly there's this weird nod into where they, in the first Terminator movie, where they show Sarah Connor on her, moped, and she's heading to her job, and it's like this real nice that you never heard another thing like it in any of the Terminator movies, this real nice melody. But yeah, and it was probably the first time you ever thought of a synthesizer as, like, badass in, movie
yeah.
score form. And then when you take Terminator 2, obviously, and you add the song score to it with "You Could Be Mine" by Guns N' Roses and all of that, you've really got something quite special. So, yeah, Brad Fiedel and the Terminator, specifically 1 and 2.
Love it, love it. I'm trying to think of. I was trying to think of any actual contemporary song that's in Terminator, and I think you're right. What about when they're in Tech? Do you remember Tech Noir, the the nightclub they're in, where
Oh, yeah, that's right.
he finally confronts Sarah for the very first time,
Uh-huh.
and because she thinks that obviously Kyle Reese
Is the guy, yeah.
is the stalker, and it's not,
Uh-huh.
and it's the first time you hear, "Come with me if you want to live."
Uh-huh.
Is there a band that's playing there?
There
Is
is,
there?
and man, now I'm so frustrated with myself because I did just see the movie. Um, oh my gosh, I can't remember, and I even looked it up because I was wondering who it was.
Oh, I
Oh,
can't find dude, I can't find it, but,
darn it.
yeah,
You
great
guys do
choice.
your thing, I'll look it up because I also need to tell my dog to shut up real quick too.
Really?
Yeah.
Right. Over to you, Sean, number 3, please.
Number 3 is probably one of my favorite movies, out there. It's one of them. It's not my favorite, but it's definitely near the top. The composer is Alexander Desplat, um, who's done multiple Wes Anderson films and many other
Yeah.
things. And this film is The Fantastic Mr. Fox. Um, it's one of those ones that I can put on in the background. Madison, that movie means a lot to Madison and I. When it came out, we were both working in Frontierland in
Yeah.
Disney World, and so with a mixture of kind of the whimsical, like uh, tracks that were written for the movie or were part of the story, mixed with the Ballad of Davy Crockett or the
Yeah.
Beach Boys or the Rolling Stones or Burl Ives, like just the fact that all of that is mishmashed into a, f- a score about for a film, like a stop motion film about an animated fox and his family and his battle against like the powers that be. Like it's one of those soundtracks. I'm like, it shouldn't work, but it does, and it's
Yeah.
somehow all of those songs tie together, and it's stuff that we still sing, and we'll put it on in the car, uh, and just sing the goofy, bouncy Bogus Bunsen Bean songs. But no, I think Alexander Desplat's one of my. It definitely holds a high place in my regard because like we're big Wes Anderson film fans, and then but it's then you like look at his discography and things that he's written, and it's like it goes beyond that. And I think he's extremely talented, and that's love that film and that soundtrack.
No, it's a great film. It's a great film. I must admit, not to remembering the soundtrack so much, but it is a perfect film. Okay, my number three. My number three, um, and very much on the synth vibe, with that Eric brought up in the last round. It's Tangerine Dream and Legend. So in the UK, we got the poor man's version of Legend. We got the official release, if you like, of Legend. And Legend, just to remind folks that aren't that are a normal age and not as old as me, Legend is the Ridley Scott film, um, starring a very very young Tom Cruise as a the forest boy Jack, who has to save his love Lily, from the devil, or what they call darkness, but basically the devil, that is played expertly and beautifully with amazing makeup and cosmetics by Tim Curry, the great Tim Curry. And it's an old film and it's great. It's a really really good film, but really what makes that film for me is the score by Tangerine Dream. The original production came out with a very straightforward soundtrack, and quite frankly, an awful lot of the original producers and creative team of the movie did not like that version of it. So they went to Tangerine Dream, a very prolific 80s synth band at the time, lots and lots of vocals, and asked them to do the soundtrack instead, and it makes the movie. If there was an example of of a band or a composer that whose work actually makes the movie significantly better, that's for me is it. And I know that Araj talked about it before in the past as well on the Sith list. So and it's one of those moments where I was listening to you guys on the Sith list and I was like, yes, Araj, finally you're right about something. So yeah, it was for me. My number three is Legend, and Tangerine Dream's version of the soundtrack, which disappointingly you can't get on physical media anymore. You can only get the original movie release, which is kind of sad, and it makes the film a little bit more doughy, a little bit more stoic. That's my number three.
Interesting. Interesting. Finally, a Raj comes through too on something.
Yeah.
So there you go. Okay.
So number two, Eric.
Yes. All right. This is a big one for me. And it's Alan Silvestri is the composer. And he has done about 1 trillion movies. Almost every Zemeckis film ever since 1984. And the year, not the movie. But I mean, like stuff that if you look, here's what's wild. If you look him up on IMDb, it's what is he known for? Polar Express, Forrest Gump, right? But here's the big one, the money, the one that really, like, to me, put him out in the forefront. is Back to the Future. It's
Du-du-du-du-du-du.
an
Yeah.
amazing, amazing score. Now here's the deal, that movie hit at a very particular time for me that was just perfect, and, like, my life had been flipped upside down. I moved away from every friend I'd ever known, and my family relocated to, the Atlanta metro area, Atlanta, Georgia, and during that summer, that's when the movie was out, and I went to go see it while we were living in a hotel because the house we bought wasn't done being built, and we went to see this movie. But here's the thing, it also has an excellent song score, but Silvestri's orchestral work is just top, top shelf. The cues in that, so good, so good, so good. But Back to the Future is the reason that I learned to play the guitar. Is
Nice.
that movie, yeah, and so the 2 go hand in hand, and obviously that was because of the song score with, you know, Michael J. Fox doing Johnny Be Good and all of that stuff, which I wish he did an amazing job of faking that guitar playing. Even, Huey Lewis, who was in the movie, you know, he had the big hit with Power of Love and Back in Time. He was the judge at the talent show or
Mm.
the band auditions for the dance, and he's the one who gets the bullhorn and says, "I'm sorry, you're just simply too loud." He was telling Michael J. Fox behind the scenes, he's like, "I cannot believe you don't know how to play the guitar. It's spot on how good you're doing at faking this." But, yeah, that's the movie that made me do it, and part of that reason isn't just the song score, it is the soundtrack, and that brought it all together. Now, a little funny side note is Back to the Future was on. I was watching it, and I said, "Hey, kids, come here. I want you to see this." And it's a beginning scene where the clocks are ticking and that big, huge one speaker amplifier he's got.
Yeah.
And I was telling my daughter, I said, "This is the movie that made me want to play the guitar." And so she's watching the clocks ticking and she's like, "I don't get it." And then he hits that chord and it blows him across the room. And she looks at me as only like she was probably 6 at the time could. And she goes, "Why would that make you want to play the guitar?" And walked out. Yeah, she's brutal, man. But, yeah. Silvestri has a body of work that he's like John Williams, right? I mean,
Mm,
just the list goes on. Avengers: Endgame possibly is one you've heard of,
mm.
and on and on and on and on and on. Quite good. Great composer.
Sean, your number 2, please. I
Mm.
I never thought I'd say that today, but anyway, Sean, what's your second favorite?
My number 2, kind of harkens back to something you were talking about earlier, where it's kind of in that same vibe of the music you put on while you're working. This I think this came out probably right near the end of my college or kind of maybe near the start of my like working career. So really kind of getting into that. Like, I too work at a desk and work kind of stationary and I don't really want to be. So like really kind
Mm,
of discovering that music that will keep keep me in a spot for a while. And I think one of the first albums around that time that would do that was the movie Tron Legacy uh, by Daft Punk.
Mhm.
There was something like there was something mesmerizing about that album that
yeah.
I was never a sit down, sit still, and listen to a CD or an album or whatever end to end over and over and over again. And like there was just something that captivated me. Of like I don't know if it was just. I mean, I've always been a huge Daft Punk fan, but the kind of sitting back in the pocket and like them making a score where it's kind of reserved and it's not full blown alive like kind of concert experience. Like, because I know when I first came out, I'm like, it's gonna be a new Daft Punk album. Let's go. And then you get it and you're like, man, but then you listen to it and it just kind of like it's almost like a lullaby. It just kind of lulls you into this like, all right, I'm in the universe, I'm in the world, I'm kind of focused. And I could listen to that album over and over and over and over again. Just throughout the workday. Next thing you know, the day's over and it's like, man, uh yeah, that's one of my
Yeah.
favorite like that album goes all over the place. Like Derezzed is one of my favorites. Like I think if Apple Music or whatever still did play counts, that'd probably be a billion by this point in time. But no, that one definitely holds a soft place in my heart.
I'm with you, man. I went. I was lucky enough to go and see Daft Punk live, and before they
That's awesome.
broke up on hiatus, I went to see them in Paris, which was cool, really, really cool. And yeah, I mean, their work is extraordinary. You know, it really is extraordinary, and it is. Yeah, it's dance, but it's kind of like it's very operatic anyway. Not, I mean, we were talking earlier on about before we recorded just the production values of Taylor Swift, for example, and just how amazing they are. These guys' production values is very, very good as well. I wouldn't say on a par, but certainly, or was, sorry, very, very good as well. So yeah, no, I'm stoked that, man. That's really cool. Um, my number two, unfortunately, is I'm going back to the commercial cheese. It's Hans Zimmer, and I know he's he's got quite the repertoire across, what is it, Inception, Gladiator, goodness me, Master and Conqueror, a heck of a lot of stuff. But for me, I think that one album I play in this room where you're seeing me now, um, the most is the Blade Runner 2049 soundtrack. And again, it's I can't give the whole praise to Hans Zimmer because there's an awful lot of Frank Sinatra and Elvis that's also spread across the soundtrack as well. But I'll give him props for the main parts of the album because it just chills me out. It just chills me out, and yeah, it's kind of synth pop and stuff. And I mean, I love his choral stuff. For example, in Gladiator, when Maximus, passes to Elysium, and the choral work he does there, phenomenal. But across his entire repertoire, for me, it's Blade Runner 2049. And yes, I've got to put an honorable mention there to Vangelis because without Vangelis and the original, Tears in the Rain and the original soundtrack for Blade Runner, we wouldn't have got what I think is a masterpiece in modern cinema soundtracks. But um, so yeah, honorable mention to Vangelis, but quite frankly, it's my number two because it's what I play the most. And I hope that makes sense. And I know it's commercial, I know it's cheesy, but I don't care. I'm too old for worrying about that kind of stuff.
There's a reason that commercial music is commercial and popular. It's because it's good. It speaks to people. You know, it
Yes.
is. That's the
Yeah,
bottom
yeah,
line, and, I always come back to the whole Sith gag of Ace job liking what you like, but
yeah,
it's serious. I like a lot of stuff that's, popular, and people who pretend like they don't and they only like super obscure stuff, there's usually that's not 100% genuine if you don't like
yeah.
anything that's, popular media, but, I totally get it, man. So good
Well,
on you.
a couple of years back, I went to see, and we're mentioning Star Wars again because we can. I know it's not part of the qualifying for the qualifying part for the top five, but a couple of years back, and I know you guys have it over in the States as well, where you have a live orchestra playing the soundtracks of the original trilogy.
Mhm.
So I went to go and see the Empire Strikes Back in concert a few years back. It was my 50th birthday, and it was one of the presents that my lovely wife had given me. And secondly, it was a live. It was the London Philharmonic that was playing, which is a different level kind of classical music, or tone. Sorry. Um, but they're doing the same at the moment in the UK for Hans Zimmer stuff as well. So yeah, you've got the kind of the pirate stuff and all that kind of stuff, but you've also got this amazing you got this amazing synth classic vibe going on, and we've also, now that the weather hence the reason why I'm in daylight at the moment without any lights on. The weather is changing quite nicely in the UK at the moment, and the sky is blue. And in a couple of weeks' time, Lucy and I are going to an open air concert of Hans Zimmer scores. And I'm really looking forward to it. I'm really looking forward to it. So yeah, that was my number two.
That's neat,
Right.
man. So, real quick side note on that. My friend just got to go to see the the Last Jedi.
Oh,
Yeah, The
cool.
Last Jedi with the symphony playing live,
Oh,
and he
nice.
invited me
Oh,
to it,
wicked.
but we were celebrating my wife's birthday, and I'm in the 501st, and here we are talking about Star Wars, but uh they were looking for, characters to troop at it. Now I did Empire Strikes Back in stormtrooper armor, and so during the performance, in the middle of the movie, you got to go in and stand in the back and watch. And so I was back there watching Yoda lift the X-wing out of the swamp with the theme playing with my stormtrooper helmet on, like just crying. It was
Yeah,
so
yeah, yeah,
amazing of an
yeah, yeah,
experience,
yeah.
man. And if anybody who loves movies and loves film scores, if you ever get a chance to see something like that live, please do it. It's an amazing experience when you realize how much the music informs you of what you're supposed to feel.
Mm.
It really does. It's quite wild. Um,
And what? I don't know about you. Sorry, Sean. I don't know about you as well, but also when 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 the when the orchestra isn't playing is just as impactful as when it is. Does that make
mhm.
sense?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
you gotta
Which
have
you
those
don't, which you don't, which you don't
emo.
notice without actually watching
Mm.
an orchestra. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway,
No, no, it totally does. So my number one, and this was tough
yes.
because I'm stealing one of your composers, which was also your number one, but I had to because I would be dishonest if I didn't say this was my most favorite movie composer of all time. The movie, though, was different. And that
Okay.
is Ennio Morricone. All right. And it is
Yay.
The Good, Bad, and the Ugly. And that movie, I watched that as a young kid with my dad and being immediately intrigued by the music of it. And obviously, you've got the theme that's like everybody hears it in their head. Ah, and y- if you ever listen to David W. Collins, the Soundtrack Show podcast, he does an amazing discussion of it. But like that's, all of the things that happen in there, you when you hear the ideas behind it later, it's like, oh well, duh, it was right there in front of me. He's emulating the sounds of the desert with the coyotes and all of that stuff. But the one that sticks to me so hard is the Ecstasy of Gold. And if you're not familiar with it off the top of your head, if you've ever seen Metallica live, you've heard this song. They have been playing it at the front of their concerts for the last million years. And it is a great example of how metal, piano, acoustic guitar, a handful of brass instruments can be. It is the most intense work of music that I've ever heard in my life. And what he did with it. And when you hear notes about like the notes that he gave the players to know you need to pick that guitar harder, to the point that it's out of tune, you're hitting it so hard. And just things like that and what he was able to come up with. And when you think about the time that it was, where, you couldn't just sit in a studio by yourself and spend forever plunking around on stuff. I mean, he thought about all of this ahead of time and got these musicians into the studio and made this magic happen. And that movie in and of itself, there are so many great moments. And
Mm.
one of the things that I love about that score, and it's one of the things I love about so many movie scores, is I don't need to see the movie to instantly be taken right back to it just by hearing the music. You always hear these like what ifs. What You have to lose the like, you get to keep this, but so well, in the ones I heard. No more Star Wars stuff ever made ever again, or Star Wars forever, but you have to lose the original trilogy. It
Mm,
disappears forever and you can't ever watch it again. What would you
mm,
pick? And I'm like, my question is, well, do I get to keep the soundtracks? Because if I do, then I don't need the movie. Because hearing that music, it's so emotional and it's so tied to it that it's all in your head. The
mm,
music is what makes that happen, not
Yep.
the other way around. And I can tell you how true that is when I would watch my kid play. When he plays with his toys, whether whatever he was into at the time, whether it was Pirates of the Caribbean, whether it was Star Wars, whatever, Harry Potter, he would not even realizing he was doing it, be humming the themes of the music while he played. I'm like getting emotional because that's how powerful the music
mm.
is that's what he associated with it, and he's playing with his toys, and he'll make explosion sounds and stuff, but he's singing the songs, the scores, because it's so tied to it. Hooray, music, hooray, and good job, Ennio Morricone, for making The Good, Bad, and the Ugly one of the most rad soundtracks of all time. And I'm sorry I stole your composer, Andy.
No, 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 no. You're more than welcome. I mean, if both of us are nominating the same guy, then
Yeah.
he certainly just deserves number one. Sean, give me your
Well,
number one.
I'm going to add something to what Eric was saying a second ago, and to what you were saying before that about seeing the movies and the symphonies in real life. I think that adds to the emotion too. Like, you don't realize, like, I think that was one of, I mean, I've always known, but that was really the eye-opening thing for me. Like, I think I saw Pirates of the Caribbean or something in concert or whatever it was. And you notice the subtleties
Mhm.
more. When all of a sudden it's like quiet, it's like it's just the movie. Then all of a
Yeah.
sudden, just light strings coming in. It's like, oh, like I feel it. I can feel like my
Uh-huh.
chest tightening up. I'm like, oh,
Right.
I can physically feel the music in me while I'm watching this. It's not just the visuals. Um, and what's funny, like a funny, quick little anecdote. I'm pretty sure my cat is affected by TV and movie soundtracks because we'll be sitting on the couch or whatever, and then like just one, the other one completely oblivious, no clue. But like all of a sudden, like the music will get tense, and you'll see him get tightened up or like start freaking out. Like no visuals, nothing going on, and just like and start getting like anxious. It's like,
Mhm.
do they have a perception of this? Is it universal? And so it's just then every time I say it, it's just like, wow, like I feel like he's affected. He'll get up, start running around, like looking at stuff. It's like, huh, interesting. I don't know. I could be crazy, but
No, you're not though, because that's why anxious sounding music is produces anxiety. There's a reason it's so fitting to the mood. And real quick, one thing I want to throw out there, and this is a modern music production sort of thing. If you've never seen an orchestra live of any sort, when you strip away like modern recording techniques and there's no compression. Compression makes louder things quieter and quieter things louder, and that's why everything sounds like this nice, consistent, and it increases the apparent loudness, the perceived loudness of something, right? That's why if you think modern recordings sound louder than old ones, you're right, they do, even though the peaks might be the same. When you take that away and you watch an orchestra or listen to an orchestra, the loudness will startle you to death. The
Mm.
quietness is so quiet that it makes you think of a mouse walking along. It's amazing the difference when you get to hear what a real orchestra sounds like in real life versus the recording processes and then compression and all that stuff that make it viable for release. It is a breathtaking.
Before I go to my number one, I've got to ask you a question, Eric. And I
I
asked
don't
you
think
this
Sean
question.
said his number one though. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry, sorry. No, 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 no,
No,
no.
no, but you go ahead.
But I do
go
need to
ahead.
ask you a question. I do need to ask you a question. Knowing your love of westerns and bearing in mind the answer, sorry, your reverence for your number one. I asked you a question a long, long time ago, and I don't think you've done it. Have you watched Deadwood yet as a series?
No. I
Oh
know, and
God,
I know I need to. I
I'm gonna
know.
buy I'm gonna buy you the box set, dude. You have to watch Deadwood. Sorry, I went off. I did it again, Sean. I'm sorry. I went off at tangent again. Eric, please watch Deadwood. Please watch Deadwood. You will love it.
I'll make a note
Um,
right now.
well, especially with the humor as well. The humor is very Red Dead. It's very Red Dead humor, um, which I think you'd appreciate. Sorry, Sean. Back to you, my friend. Number one.
So first, you don't have to keep apologizing to me. This is the content that we're looking for. This is the meat on the bone, man. This is the marrow.
Yeah, I
Uh,
know, but you know what I'm like. I always go off at a tangent. I love a tangent.
I
I
love it.
love a
I love it.
tangent. Go on, dude.
So this movie and composer weren't originally on my list. I thought about it, and I had my list. Tron Legacy was going to be number one. I had some other honorable mentions. I thought about making a joke of it and like doing the whole switcheroo, but I was like, I think there is a movie soundtrack that has had more influence on my personality than anything else. Like if there was something that was like, Sean, what defines besides like your parents and whatever, like what defines you more than anything else? And like what soundtrack never gets old, what movie never gets old, and you can just watch from now until the end of time. I guarantee you nobody will I bet nobody can guess this answer, and it's going to be completely out of left field. Um, anybody want to any takers? Any takers on that? If not, I'll just jump straight into it. Nobody.
Mac and me.
Oh, dude, that's such a good guess. Oh, it's so good. I don't know what the soundtrack
I
is though, but that's a good movie.
I don't know. I'm sorry. If you
It,
were a little bit older, I would have a real solid guess,
I
but
mean, there is no way anybody could guess it, but except for maybe a handful of people who've heard me talk about this movie before. But the composer is Miles Goodman, who did Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, and along with Alan Menken did Little Shop of Horrors. But those are not my pick. My pick is the Muppet Christmas Carol.
I
That
would have never gotten that.
oh my god, it
Dude,
is the
dude.
best.
I
Ah,
love you.
they're like I've seen that movie at least a billion times. I can
Yeah.
recite every note of that score. I could do every whistle, every mouse squeak, everything. Like it makes me emotional talking about it. The fact that Michael Caine is singing in it is it's a masterpiece. It's a million percent. If you've never seen the movie or listened to the soundtrack, I mean, you have to watch the movie to go with it. Um, it is the perfect quintessential Christmas movie. It captures for me, like, because Christmas really is really important for me. The Christmas season, the holiday season, is really important to me and my family. I grew up with that movie. I grew up with the album, then the CD, then the digital version of the John Denver and the Muppets Christmas album. That's fantastic. So, like, the Muppets and all of their Christmas stuff is the embodiment of my humor, my personality, and just I want to be in that world. I love it. It's a masterpiece.
That's
Well, I mean,
awesome.
mate, that's brilliant. I mean, as a Brit, I mean, obviously I applaud. You know, I'm kind of forced to applaud anything Charles Dickens, but I have to say, Muppet Christmas Carol is the best version.
Oh yeah.
Out of all the actors across all the years that have, you know, the rather traditional actors that take themselves rather seriously, that do an amazing Scrooge. Honestly, mate, Muppet's Christmas Carol is the best, bar none, bar none. So great choice.
Just real quick, speaking of the Muppet world and that world, have you ever seen Jim Henson's Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas?
Yes.
Dude,
No,
Uh,
it is the best. It's a it's a little like what hour runtime at most. Um all puppets, 100%.
cool,
And it's a story of a young otter named Emmett who he and his mom live on this frozen lake, and it's kind of the classic tale of he's selling the thing that's important to him to get his mom something for Christmas, and she's selling the thing that would go along with that to get him something important for Christmas, and they end up having to everybody's entering this big talent show. they're going to sing a song, and it's it's so good. It is so good. Oh, Emmett
I
Otter's
just,
Jug Band Christmas.
I've just found it. I've just found it. It's on the list. It's
I
on
have
the
you
list.
covered, Andy. I can help you with that if you want to.
Okay. Okay. No problem at all.
And along those same lines, since we were talking about The Office and stuff earlier, I don't know if you guys have ever seen the Muppets series they did for like I think a season or two, but it was kind of like
One season.
framed. It's like the one season, but it's kind of framed around The Office. I don't remember. It was just called The Muppets or something, Muppets
I
or
think
whatever it
so.
was.
It was brilliant, and the fact that it didn't get renewed, devastating, because it was so good. The whole premise of the show is that Miss Piggy is a talk show host, and all of the Muppets are her production crew, and it's a reality show where they're talking to the camera and going about their thing, and one of the best gags is that Miss Piggy is dating Josh Groban, the
Like
real Josh
the
Groban.
real Josh Groban.
And Kermit's jealous of it. It's freaking beautiful.
Excellent.
Must watch.
Excellent. God,
There's
two
a
on the
great
list.
scene where
Brilliant.
Fozzie is dating this girl, and he's going home to meet her parents, and she's a human, and there he is, and the dad, I can't remember the actor who played the girl's dad, but they're eating, and he's like telling the wife, "Oh my gosh, this food is delicious," and he goes, "He likes the salmon. What a surprise!" And just all these things because he's a bear, and it's
Excellent.
so good.
Excellent. Right. I'll try and be
Sorry,
as quick.
sorry for the tangent, Andy. I'm sorry.
No,
Oh, I
no
see what you
problem.
did there.
Listen. I welcome. As a tangent king, I welcome tangent. So you guys crack on. My number one is. I'll be quick, but it means an awful lot to me. My number one is also Ennio Morricone, and it's for the film The Mission. Not only do I think it's a powerful film, but for me, it landed at the right time for me. Um, for many different reasons. I I kind of it landed at a time where I was somewhat confused in my purpose in life. You know, I didn't I wasn't particularly clear on what was important to me and what my way forward. I'd lost my father when I was quite young. I lost my father at 13 years old, and I watched this film, and it was about and I'm not a particularly spiritual guy. You guys know I'm not a particularly spiritual guy, but this the story about the idea of the redemption of a particular guy that wasn't particularly nice, played by Robert De Niro, and his absolution, if you like, to doing something better for someone else, regardless of the outcome, really resonated with me as a film. But not only that, there's a particular scene in the film that reminded me an awful lot of my dad. There's a film where Robert De Niro. I don't know if you guys have seen this film, but he climbs a very tall. Sorry, premise of the film is that it's about Jesuit priests in South America. I think they're in Paraguay, and they are bringing Christianity to the indigenous species. And as usual, being Westerners, we kind of force the whole subject on the indigenous species, and the result of that is that it probably was for the worst thing that ever that actually happened to them. But um, one of the protagonists is Robert De Niro, as part of his penance um, for a particular act that he did, was to climb a very tall waterfall. And when he gets to the top of the waterfall, he breaks down. It kind of he's emotionally shattered, and he can finally grieve and get over something. And at that moment in time, he looks very similar to how my dad did, who himself was a very tortured person in his life. And so visually, the film means an awful lot to me. And then behind that is a very compelling a very compelling soundtrack by Ennio Morricone, and the main piece that is repeated throughout this movie is a piece called Gabriel's Oboe. Gabriel being one of the protagonists, sorry, one of the priests played by Jeremy Irons, who is very, very eloquent on the oboe, and it's this beautiful, beautiful piece of music that sometimes includes a wider orchestra or a wider selection of instruments, but mainly is a solo piece that is played all the way through the film, and it's a beautiful piece of work. And so that music, alongside this visual representation or visual image that reminded me so much of my dad before we lost him, means an awful lot to me. And that piece of music, therefore, is very, very big. What made it even more compelling to me is my daughter, my youngest daughter Abigail, who is plays an awful lot of instruments. She's very mathematical, and one day I'm sure Eric, you'll be able to explain to me why someone that's very smart at math can also read music like that, because she's explained to me before it's very similar. It's very, very similar. Anyway, the point being is that when she was when she was a child and she was growing up, she learnt the flute, the piccolo, and the last one was the oboe. And as she was leaving school to go on to university, she got me. She there was a kind of end of year or graduation talent show kind of thing going on. And she played Gabriel's oboe for me,
Oh
and
man.
I I lost it, man. I absolutely lost it. And she was already very good. I mean, she's great. I mean, she's grade 8 in all three. I don't know if grading makes a difference. It is a thing over in the US, but she's grade out on all three instruments. She's all very, very good. But she's never shown any interest in. There's never been that kind of connection with her enjoying music and learning to play music and me until that moment. And yeah, I I'm welling up now. I mean, I lost it, man. I absolutely lost it. I mean, you're talking about we're only going as far back as what she was 18, so 5 years ago, 4 years ago now, and yeah, and so that just kind of cemented that movie, but most importantly, that soundtrack in my
Mhm.
mind for the rest of my days.
That's awesome.
Great pick.
Because
Yeah.
it's the one thing that kind of connects the generations. It's me and my dad and me and my daughter, and it just means an awful lot to me.
That's
That's
awesome, man.
awesome, dude.
Dang. Yeah, we can definitely discuss how math and music relate.
It's
It's
odd.
it
Sorry, I wouldn't say it's odd. It's fascinating, Eric.
it's
It's
way more
absolutely
direct than you
fascinating.
could possibly guess if you
Yeah,
don't play an
okay.
instrument. It's wild. But
But she can see. I mean, it's like yourself. She was already very, very good at math, and then the minute that kind of she's reading score music,
mhm.
she sees it the same way that she would see an algorithm.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
So
Sorry, not
one
crazy,
no
but
yeah,
amazing.
one little side thing was I don't wanna bore your audience with it, but, like, in most professional settings, especially in, whether they even have a name for it, the Nashville number system, musicians describe music to each other using numbers. You
Right.
remember how, in Back to the Future, when Marty McFly this is one of those things that people are always asked, "That's crap, right? There's no way that's real." And, Boo, Carlos from the Sith List actually asked us when we were talking about it. They said, "The scene where he turns around and tells the band, 'Hey, guys, this is a blues riff B. Watch me for the changes and try to keep up.' And then they somehow magically play it. There's no way that's real." It's 100% real. Because
Yeah.
the blues structure is a 1-4-5 is what that's called, and the musicians know it, and they're like, whenever you're playing a chord and a chord change is getting ready to come up for somebody that's not familiar with it, they'll say 7 minor, da da da, and we all know what that means, and
Yeah.
it's all numbers, man. It's pretty wild.
That is so
And
cool.
harmony, where notes are stacked on top of each other, all math. It's all based on math intervals and harmonics. But anyway, blah 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 blah. Um, can I mention I had an honorable mention I wanted to throw out there. And this was really very tough for me when I was trying to decide what to leave on the list, and I almost like took the Terminator off of there. Um, and that's Danny Elfman for basically everything he's ever done ever.
Mm.
But, very specifically for me is Pee-wee's Big Adventure. I've
Nice.
That's probably the movie, the second that I've seen the second most times, only behind Star Wars, the original Star Wars. I've seen Pee-wee's Big Adventure so many times. Whenever I was a kid, when we lived in a place where you couldn't get cable, I had Pee-wee's Big Adventure on VHS, and I watched it every day during the summer whenever, school was out, my parents worked, and it was too far to walk anywhere because it was
Mm.
kinda out in the country, man. I'd watch that 3 and 4 times a day, and, Danny Elfman's musical stylings are completely bonkers, and he's instantly recognizable, and when you think about the fact that he did, the Batman, Keaton's Batman, and,
Yeah.
Beetlejuice, but
Nightmare Before Christmas.
Nightmare Before Christmas is another good one, and, again, listen to David W. Collins' the soundtrack show about the music of Danny Elfman. It's very good, but he's tremendous as well.
That's very cool.
He's on my honorable mention list as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, there's so many. I mean, we could go on for hours and hours, and I could do this. Oh God, I wish we were in the same country under a warm sun and just chewing the fat somewhere where we could just talk about this for hours. But thank you very much, folks. That's really, really cool. There is something else we wanted to talk to you about, if you don't mind, Eric. If you
I'm
have
ready.
another 5 or 10 minutes,
Absolutely.
and this is going to be led by my partner in crime, Sean, and he's got some questions
I
around
mean,
a particular subject that he's very interested to talk to you about.
it's a pretty basic question, and I know it's something we could fill a whole other podcast with, but I kind of I wanted to be able to see you when I ask you. It's like, what about the sign? What about the sign? You know,
Well,
the
I saw the sign, and it opened up my eyes. Um, okay, so
full of
listen.
tears, full of tears.
Yes. Yeah. The Bluey episode, The Sign, it just aired this past Sunday on Disney Plus. Well, around the world. It came out at the same time everywhere. And that was April 14th, 2024. And it was 28 minutes long, which is about 4 times the length of your standard Bluey episode. And it moved me to tears. I will just
Yeah.
be completely honest, and people have had their complaints with it, mostly revolving around the fact that it had a happy ending, and you should have used that as an opportunity to teach a lesson, and it didn't accurately reflect what happened in my life, so screw that thing, which I find a bit disappointing. It ended exactly the way I wanted it to. There's several things going on with this that I wanna point out. Bluey, if you've never seen it, is an adult show in the guise of a children's show, and it's universally loved by all ages. As a podcaster doing a Bluey podcast, we get emails from people that, people are sending in uh, messages from their kids all the way to 18-year-olds who have no kids to grown-ups, parents talking about their relationship with it. It is an amazing slice of real life, and as a parent, you constantly see yourself in this show, right?
Mm.
And this particular episode, The Sign, full spoilers, everybody. The whole notion is that they're selling their home and they're gonna move. And one kid seems like, yeah, whatevs, and the other kid's like, this can't be happening. Mom doesn't seem like she's on the same page with it, and dad is like, can tell that, but at the same time is like, well, it's a job with more money and it's gonna mean a better life. And through the butterfly effect comes into it really big in the form of a butterfly flying in the car to represent it, but it's through this happenstance of events that leads to an understanding and a resolve that I think a lot of times shows are afraid to do. One of the reasons I love Parks and Recreation as a series is that it's one of those examples of sometimes everything just works out. As a general rule, the ending of every Parks and Rec episode was happy. They didn't need to use that show as a reminder that sometimes life sure sucks, because people watch TV to escape reality, not have more of it heaped on them. And in this episode of Bluey the Sign, there's a line that their teacher teacher tells Bluey. And this passed over my head. Somebody else pointed out to me. She reads Bluey this story, and it's all these things that happen that might seem bad, but might seem good. And the whole answer is, we'll see. And Bluey asks her teacher, why do most stories have happy endings? And I don't remember her quote exactly, but the gist of it is because life is going to deal us so many endings that aren't happy. We need
Mm.
stories that do have happy endings, which is exactly what happened in the story of this show, right? I think they sort of told you ahead of time that it was going to be okay. And the way they pulled it off, from the storytelling, the voice acting, the score. Joff Bush, the musical director of the show, is a genius. And like, for just as an example, there was a very pop arrangement of Pachelbel's Canon in D, which is, if everybody does this da 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 ba, da da da, it's that song, right? It's every eh, people walk down the aisle to it all the time, the beginnings of it. They did that. The way they fit it all together was just tremendous. And it gave a real insight into the thing's not about the thing. Okay.
Mm.
The show is about whether or not they were going to move, and the realization that they didn't want to. And the one kid, the wild part was, is the one kid who seemed okay with the house getting sold didn't realize they couldn't still live there after that. So it's like, oh, the betrayal. But it was the look at it, the idea of the episode, in my opinion, was the let's look past the obvious and really dig down to what matters to us as a family versus,
Mm.
like, yeah, more money equals better life, maybe, but everybody's miserable. It's less about the fact that they decided not to move and more about the fact that the dad, Bandit, got an eyeful of what was actually important to his family. A better life with more money and all that, that sounds important, but when he looked at what they needed, what they really needed from him, it wasn't that, it was this other thing. And I realize you
Mm.
can throw me 1,000 anecdotal stories about why that's not realistic, but in
Well,
this case, it
because it makes it
nailed
seem
it.
like it's just simple. It's like, because his frame of mind was, I want to give the kids the
Mhm.
best opportunity in life that they can that like, and so that was his argument the whole time. He's like, I just,
Right.
because he would even get emotional about it. He's like,
Mhm.
it I just want to give them all the
Uh-huh.
opportunities we didn't have. And I think that's where it could be easy. He's like, oh, I just want to be greedy, money, money, money. And I think there's a lot of people out there who are looking at it from that
Mhm.
mindset of like, and there's also the people who are like, they should have moved, but you could see his struggle along with the other 13 subplots that are
Right.
going on in this kids show that have been either long running or the last
Mhm.
6 episodes. It's like the amount of like existentialism, uh, interpersonal communications and relationship
Mhm.
strife and advice that they can squeeze into an 8-minute show and then culminate in this much larger story with
Mhm.
way more people involved in a 20-minute finale. Like, I don't have children. But for those who know and those who don't, it's like I grew up in a house with 7 kids in it at all times. My mom was an at-home babysitter. I've seen like newborns to 7-year-olds,
Mhm.
and like we're still friends with these people, and like I've been around kid shows my entire life, and it's like there is nothing that holds a candle. This is borderline prestige television
Mhm.
masterwork, and this 28-minute episode is like Madison and I are sitting on the couch, we're like
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
watching it. It's like, how does it pull all of this out of
Mhm.
you? And it just gets those those relationships just perfect. It's so real, but it's cartoon dogs.
Right.
It's
Well,
it's
and that's something too that listen, I get people's, I guess, issues with it. But like I said, man, sometimes things just work out and
Mm.
they use the idea of selling the house as a way to teach a lesson about the dad realizing what his family really needed from him and what giving them the better life meant. It didn't mean, oh no, moving wrecks your life and da 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 da. And that's not what they meant. That was just the thing that they chose to explain it the best because it was the most universally understood, right? Even if you had never faced a move like that, you would understand that how that might feel because it's something you can relate to. And you do see things where people are complaining like, "Hey, we're a military family and we've had to move a bunch of times and my kids watch this and they're like, "Well, if that's how it went, then why can't we do that?" And whilst that's a fine argument, and I do kind of get that perspective, at the same time, it's like, well, then Bandit and Chili should get divorced because it's 50% of marriages end in divorce. Then why are they still married? Because my
Yeah.
family didn't stay. And that's just not fair. There's too many layers to it. And to the naysayers who want to say that people don't just back out on a contract on buying a house. Oh, yes, they do. It happened to me twice when I was selling my old house. Two times. One of the times we things happen with this lady, we get it, and we just like, here's your earnest money back. It was our option. The second one wasn't like that, but it happened 2 times, and so if you're saying that it's impossible and that's not realistic, meh, it is. If you wanna go down that, it's totally realistic, and it's
and also
quite unfortunate.
and if you're saying that, it's a show about cartoon dogs.
Yes, I do
So
wanna remind
move
that too.
along.
Yeah.
But no, genius. And I thank you. Like
Mhm.
that was like
But the
it
medium,
was amazing.
sorry to
No, go
interrupt
ahead.
because I'm in no way an aficionado on this. But the medium being animated cartoon
Mhm.
dogs is is the mechanism to bring families together, right? I mean, at the end of the
Mhm.
day, if it's a serious drama, then children typically aren't going to watch it. The the fact that these are cartoon dogs that parents can enjoy the story with their children, and to your point, Eric, the lesson is actually more relatable to the parent than it is the
Right.
child. And meanwhile, the child is enjoying in the same environment, the content. That's some powerful stuff. It's like I've always said about The Simpsons. I mean, The Simpsons is nowhere near it's designed for adults. It's an awful actually. Simpsons is is a bad example because of the content. But the majority of Pixar movies, I'm sure for this day, I mean, certainly the comedy and the humor behind it is focused towards is focused towards a mature viewer.
Mhm.
I'm in awe. I mean, I'm in awe of. I mean, it's I follow. I mean, Eric, I follow you, and I think the work that you're doing and with your family on and discussing it as a family, um, and the lessons that you are learning, not just your kids, but you guys as
Mhm.
parents as well, I think
Yeah.
is pretty powerful stuff. And to your point, Sean, it's something to be applauded.
One of the things I find the most interesting about the show is that when they talk to the voice actors, they all record their lines
Mm.
separately. The people who play like the main parents, Bandit and Chili, they only met in person for the first time this past year when Bluey was
Wow.
becoming huge in the States and they were on the Tonight Show together. I believe it was. That's the first
Yeah.
time they'd ever seen each other in person because
Wow.
they do their lines. And so the mastermind behind the show, Joe Brum, he personally directs everybody, and he gets these performances out of these people, um, separately, and, a lot of them are recording at their house. There's a pretty cool thing of Dave McCormick, who plays the dad, who's also in the band Custard. He's a singer slash musician, um, where he's, like, sitting at a desk, and he's basically using a mic similar to ours. He's not in a booth, and he's doing the lines, but so many of these actors will say, I gotta be honest with you, I'm not really playing a character. I'm just
Yeah.
being me. And that's what brings this realism to it. It's so nice. And the other thing too is they're short. It's universally appealing. There's no, like, secret hidden message that's gonna turn your kid into, a psycho killer robot. It's nothing. You can't make any arguments like that. It's just good. It's not preachy. It's not, condescending. It talks to kids like they're people and like they're smart, but it does the same thing to the parents as well. And one last thing I'll say, it's really nice to see a dad portrayed in this manner, because typically in television over the past, say, 20, 30 years, dads have either been no nonsense domineering, like what I say goes, I'm the head of this household, the
Yeah.
end. Stupid. The Simpsons, the prime example. Even though he's got a
Yeah.
heart of gold, Homer Simpson is an idiot, and you've seen a lot of that. Or like Al Bundy as an example, who is this father who doesn't have a ton of redeeming qualities, but everybody ends up liking him anyway. Where in this show, the dad, who's kind of the hero of the show many times, is somebody that kind of like I've found myself trying to be even before I knew Bluey was a thing.
Mm.
Is I'm there for my kids. I talk to them like they're people. And for anybody who is a parent or isn't a parent yet, if I can give you any advice, there is a lot of power in apologizing to your kids when you know you got it wrong, and just own it and talk to them like people. There's a ton of power in it because they deserve it. And it puts you in a good place for them to understand that when I was a kid, I thought grown-ups had it all figured out. I'll know I'm a grown-up when I quit being afraid and know instantly make decisions and never doubt myself.
Yeah.
Well, apparently I'm not a grown-up. And it's okay to let your kids know that. It's okay to let your
Yeah.
kids understand that it's not easy for us either. Anyway, that's all I got. Blah, blah, blah. Sorry.
Do not apologize. That was chef's kiss, man. That was more than I was expecting. I knew it, but thank you for allowing me to ask that. I know we've gone to our normal time that we usually hit, but I
No, that's
do really
cool.
appreciate that, and I think you summed up my thoughts on it
Mm.
He
perfectly.
he said if in all honesty, Eric, he set this up. He sent me a text yesterday saying, "I need to talk to Eric about Bluey. Do you mind?" I went, "No, you go for your life, dude. Just go for it. Just go
Oh,
for it."
that's awesome. That is awesome. Then I should have given you one of these right here then. Where is it at?
Did we learn anything today?
No matter
Or the
what, we
one
will always hit an hour 45.
yeah,
It's unavoidable.
Yeah,
or the one
I know it is.
I've
We're
got this other
fated.
sample I don't play as often because somebody complained about it in a review on Apple Podcasts, but it's this one.
You see, kids, the lesson is
Anyway,
I like that.
yeah,
I like that.
yeah.
Might have a ringtone. Eric, thank you so much. I'm still I feel a little bit more comfortable talking to you now that we've spoken for an hour and 45 minutes, but I'm still in awe of you, everything you do, and I cannot thank you enough for being my friend, and for introducing myself to Sean. I really hope that one day you come back and talk to us some more. We'll promise to choose another exciting subject for you to talk to us about. But thank you so much for your time, because I know you are the busiest dude I know at the moment. So thank you so much.
Well, Andy, I appreciate that, and I just thank you for asking me to come on the show. I love both of you guys. Like I said earlier, I only got to hang out with Sean a couple of times in real life, and I have yet to hang out with you in real life. One of these days we will, but it's just been an honor to come on, and I've had so much fun talking to you. You're two just stand-up guys, and I really like what you're bringing to the table with the show, with the slant on positivity and all of those things, because honestly, the world needs it. So, kudos to you both.
Thank you, man. Appreciate that. We are particularly bad about doing our own business, but if
Mhm.
you would like to let our 14 listeners know where they can find you, what you got going on, you're more than welcome to. Want to open that
man.
up.
So check out, I'm on a couple of podcasts. One is the Sith List. We're a pop culture kind of all things geek podcast. I also do Dinner with the Healers. It's an episode by episode Bluey podcast with my wife and 2 kids. And I also try to at least once a week stream on Twitch, twitch.tv/mouserat2217.
Good deal, man. That's awesome. For us, you can find all of our links at our website, justshillin.com. It's currently in the process of getting revamped now that we have got some fancy new cover art, thanks to the wonderful, wonderful, wonderful Christopher Hall from the Scruffy Looking Podcasters. I'm over the moon at how it turned out. I am excited to update the website to match this new theming. I cannot thank him enough. He is a super cool dude, and it just means the world to have such cool friends that are also talented. And I don't know, I'll keep waxing poetic about it. Andy, is there anything that you would like to add?
Just thanks, Chris. You're a good lad.
And with that,
You know what I
That's
forgot to
simple.
mention?
oh, go ahead.
Go on.
I forgot to mention the Dinner with the Healers website,
Oh, here we go.
theblueypodcast.com. Be sure to check it out. It's well done. Yeah, that's all I'll say about it.
I almost made it out of here. I do appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Well, I wasn't going to say, and Sean built it for me, so if you need a website, hit him up.
I think there's a common there's a common trend. They'll be like, hey, there's something going on here. But
it's perfectly informational, and it does exactly what we need. That makes it perfect.
Awesome. And thank you so much.
So-
Thank you again, Eric. Thank you, Andy. Andy, I'll let you take it away this time.
Yeah, thank you guys. Have a great weekend. It's lovely to speak to you all on a Friday. Have a good one. Thank you again, Eric. Goodbye now. Lots of love. Look after each other. Stay safe.
Bye.